In this presentation, we're going to be learning about bonds and stock. Let's start by talking about bonds. Well, not those sorts of bonds. We'll be talking about corporate bonds. The illustration you see on the right is what a corporate bond used to look like. You see some fancy scroll work that's been engraved on the bond. You see the $1,000, which is the amount that's being borrowed from whoever bought that particular bond. That's the amount that the bond holder or the bond issuer will repay at the end of the period of time that it's being borrowed for. And you see a whole lot of fine print. What the fine print lays out are all of the details around this borrowing arrangement. Not only how much has been borrowed, but what rate of interest is going to be paid, and how often those interest payments are going to happen. With corporate bonds, the way that interest is paid is it's paid on a simple basis. There's no amortization. In other words, there's no repayment of the principal until the very, very end of the life of that bond. And the payments are made on some sort of a scheduled basis. When it comes to corporate bonds, usually in the United States, these bonds will be semi-annual, and there will be one payment made every 6 months. The bond indenture is going to specify the percent interest which is being paid based on the face value of the bond, based on the amount that's being borrowed. So in this case, it would be based on an interest rate times the $1,000 face value that you can see. Off to the far right of the bond, you see some little rectangular pieces which are called coupons. These coupons would be what the bond holder would clip off and take to their bank, and the bank would give them the payment which is due on the date specified on that particular coupon. Each of those coupons is going to be worth 1/2 of whatever the annual interest payment would be. Looking at this bond, it looks like it's a 4% bond, and if that's the case, then 4% of 1,000 is $40. That would be $40 worth of annual interest, and every coupon would be worth 6 months worth of that interest. So each coupon would be worth $20. When we're understanding bonds and how to value them, what we need to do is tie this back to what we already know about the time value of money. Now, we know there are 5 moving parts in a time value of money computation, so we need to kind of understand how our bond terminology is going to tie back to those pieces. The present value that we're interested in is going to be the price of the bond, so PV is going to be the price. The future value in our time value of money computation is going to correspond to the face value. That $1,000 that I talked about that's going to be returned at the end of the life of the bond is called the face value. You can remember face value being FV pretty easily and price being PV, but there is a complication in the terminology. Sometimes the face value is also called the par value. The reason that this term springs up is because if a bond is selling for the same amount that its face value states, in other words, if it has a market price of $1,000 and a face value of $1,000, we would say that that bond is selling at par. So sometimes the face value is also called the par value. Don't be confused by the coincidence that this happens to have the initials PV in it. Just remember face value for FV and price for PV. The number of periods is still pretty obvious and is going to equal the number of periods that we have. If the bond is semi-annual, remember everything has to be semi-annual. The periods, the yield that we're working on is going to correspond to I, so our yield number that we'll put into a computation will be a semi-annual number if the periods are semi-annual, and it will be an annual number if the periods are annual. And then we've got the payment, which is going to be the coupon payment, the amount that someone would get if they had clipped off that little coupon that I pointed out. But there's a sixth number that comes up in bond computations pretty frequently, and that's the coupon rate. On the bond that I showed you on the previous slide, the coupon rate would have been around 4%, it looked like. That coupon rate is used for one thing and one thing only. The coupon rate is only used to determine how much the payment will be. For example, if you had a bond with a 10% coupon rate and a $1,000 face value, there would be a $100 annual payment. If it was a semi-annual bond, there would be 2 semi-annual payments of $50 each during the year.